Those laid to rest in the cemeteries and burial grounds of Aotearoa, New Zealand might have some of the best views that money can buy. Monuments and burial plots certainly aren't free, not by a long shot, but there are certainly some pretty beautiful, spectacular and touching ones in cemeteries like this one here in Waikari. The cemetery is located just north of Christchurch and a wee bit south along the road on the way to Hamner Springs. I'm quite fascinated by places like this here in New Zealand, Aotearoa, because you get this mixture of the old with the new, some kind of new ways that represent this sort of mountain lifestyle or alpine lifestyle perhaps. These sort of jagged rocks, which I actually find really striking, but of course there's also, you know, these cool carvings that, as well as the plants on the graves like the tussocks, that really show the kind of place that we're in. But of course there is also a bit of the old, and that symbolism, like the lambs of Albert Edward, died age 17. Don't think the view would have been much of a consequence to his family and their deep mourning, but it's still a hell of a place to be buried. There's a few things in cemeteries around the South Island you can expect to come across. You're pretty much guaranteed to find unfortunate people who have lost their lives drowning in various places, and you won't have to look very hard to find others. Of course, the other thing that you'll see here, as well as in cemeteries all over the world, are things like services cemeteries. Often wee plaques or small monuments dedicated to those who have either died in the Great Wars, and potentially some prior and after, but also those that were returned servicemen. They're usually fairly simple, and you could almost describe them as regimental in the way that they're laid out. You'll also probably get a fair bit of wind, so hopefully it's not being picked up too much today, as I can't find my dead cat. I'll have a look for it. But there are different kinds of war monuments or returned service pers monuments. Oh, there goes that wind. And some of the ones near you might be different, so leave a comment below and let me know what they're like wherever you're watching from. The other thing you get a lot of in the South Island is hints at the Scottish influence. There can be things like these red granite monuments, which are not always Scottish, but often are. But even more so than that are going to be the names. And that's usually a fair indicator of where they're from, but it might even say exactly where they were born. For me, it's been a little bit bittersweet. It's quite cool and it's fascinating for me, but I won't lie, it makes me miss Scotland quite a bit. It is a magical place. That said, New Zealand, and particularly the South Island, is pretty awesome. But there's the classic names like Campbell, Wallace, unmistakably Scottish. There's of course also your English, Irish and Welsh, although they often get a little bit lost with the English numbers, but they are all in here. Māori tended to prefer to be buried in their own urupa, but as times passed and families have become increasingly more blended, I guess, in terms of different ethnicities, you tend to find even historic cemeteries have increasingly more Māori names than they would have had in the past. a representation truly of society. Have to say too, this cemetery is actually in pretty good condition considering some of these monuments date back to the mid 1800s or towards the late 1800s. I think that's in large due to the fact that it is actually still in use for the most part, and I tend to just steer away from most of the modern burials and stick to the historic ones. Really, my interest is in preserving those memories, particularly those that are perhaps more likely to be forgotten, and seek out to try to, keep some digitalized evidence of their existence before it fades away, which unfortunately has happened in so many places. Anyway, go find another one.